to make this happen. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to my next guest, Mr. Bennie Jones. Bennie is the co-founder of Risk Management Solutions of America and has served in this capacity for 20 years. He's an experienced professional who specializes in back office support, and he has a product called Boss. He currently serves in an additional capacity. He's on the executive committee of a statewide organization, Independent Insurance Agents of Illinois. He's a board liaison for Chicago IIA Board of Directors, and he's a member of the Independent Insurance Agent and Brokers of America on their National Diversity Task Force. Now, before I introduce you to Bennie, let me just say one last thing about RMSOA. They were started in 1996, so they've been around a while. And they are an innovative company headquartered in Chicago with 5 lines of business. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Mr. Bennie Jones to my podcast. How you doing, Bennie?
I am doing great, Keith. Always good to be a part of anything that you are involved in. I'll start with that. But I probably need to do a little bit of correction because there may be somebody out there who does know me, and that information may be a little bit dated as far as my involvement with the IIA of Illinois. I am no longer on the executive committee. I have decided to get off, I think, about a year ago.
Okay.
I also have decided we made it a diversity task. Instead of the task force, we actually became a council. After that, I thought it was time for some new leadership there. And so I decided to step down. I still do get involved at times, but in a much lighter capacity. And for those who can probably see the gray in my mustache, you'll recognize that it is probably time for me to focus on business and what that transition might look like. And I said, I need to do that versus going out and volunteering. So I still volunteer. I still do things with the industry, but I do it in a different capacity.
Well, let's get into that a little bit. And I thank you for that correction. And corrections are good. And so before we get started in this, a lot for us to talk about in a short period of time. Tell our listening audience a little bit about you. Who is Bennie Jones and how'd you get started and all the good stuff?
Real simple. I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska. So I'm a Nebraska person. I came here about 42 years ago. I met my wife here, who was my next door neighbor in college, his sister. And so married her. We've been married for 42 years. So I guess I got here at least a year before that. So 43 years. I have
Congratulations.
Thank you. 3 children and one working with me in the industry and down here at the office, and 2 others that are doing different things. One is a teacher, one is still studying. And so that's kind of me. But overall, I tell people, a very humble and simple guy from Omaha, Nebraska. That's me.
So I know you, and you're not simple, but you might be humble. I got you that. Okay. So Bennie, how did you get started? I mean, I always say God provides opportunities, and so how did you get your start here?
Started with an insurance company, one of the major carriers, Liberty Mutual. I'll give them credit for deciding to train me.
So you knew out of college that you were going to go into insurance?
No, I started off in retail. I thought that I was going to be a retail person for the rest of my life. A store manager at Kmart, finding that I was on the schedule for 72 hours a week. And I looked at it and said, you know what? You could probably work 2 jobs and work less hours and make more money. My brother-in-law and my sister were in insurance, knew some other people that were in insurance. And so I said, well, let me find out a way to get into this industry. And at that time, Liberty Mutual hired you, assuming you had no prior insurance experience. And so that was my entry into it. They gave me a choice of I could be moved after training to either Des Moines, Iowa, or stay here in the Chicago area. At the time, again, I was a single man and thought, I've done that. I've done that Cornhusker and Iowa farm kind of thing for a while. I think I'll go ahead and stay right here. So
I hear you.
Yeah. And, fast forward to 1989 when I was at that time a regional director of of claims for an insurance company, always in the commercial lines, never really did much in the personal lines, always on the property casualty side and dabbled a little bit in life and health, but mainly it was on property casualty. And so we got sideways because of my promoting, as they would say, too many people probably, and if I offend anyone, I'm sorry, but too many people look like me.
Gotcha.
And so at that point is when I left and started really working towards building what is now RMSOA.
Well, because, as I was doing my research, I like to do research on my topics. Insurance is complex. It has a storied past like many industries. And we've all heard the stories of them selling life insurance to, farmers in the South and all that kind of good stuff. And so they skipped over you and you saw opportunity. So let's talk a little bit about your approach. So you have a really interesting business, and we'll get into that in a minute. You have 5 revenue streams that I like to call it. And maybe you might correct me on that. But what was your thinking as you were thinking about starting your own business?
To be honest with you, and I don't know if he's a member in the audience, I knew people that were in insurance. I knew enough people who were brokers within insurance. And I thought, well, I don't see a lot of people on the servicing side who have figured out a way to actually service business. So that was kind of the push. And there was a gentleman who used to call me every single morning, and he would ask me, what's my plan for the day when I started? And he then from there would say, well, if I didn't have a plan, I must have made enough money so I could go back to bed. So it just pushed me to really kind of say, well, hey, here's what I need to do. And then you start looking at what does this industry offer outside of just simply the normal brokerage, if you will, writing insurance. What other avenues of revenue are out there? And that's what I started doing. I started off doing more consulting versus writing business.
Gotcha.
And it worked out for a while, in my thought, I was going to be the back office supplier for all of the minority insurance brokers across the country. That was my dream. Didn't quite work out that way, but nonetheless, it has worked out. But it is really kind of looking at the industry and recognizing that even if you're not an insurance broker, there are ways to make money in this industry through service, being a service firm, as well as writing insurance policies. So call it the Nebraska somewhat hustler sort of guy that grew up trying to figure out how to make a buck when he was a kid, and then taking it now and saying, oh, let's do some other things. Let's look at those different verticals that you said. Let's look at what the insurance industry has a need for. And then let's try and develop something that will supply that need, in addition to writing insurance.
So that was your approach. So I like that. And I would assume, with you and your team, is there a creative approach where you guys are always thinking of new and innovative ways to create new revenue streams? Or when you first started out, was it, like you said, you were consulting, and what made you switch into some of the other verticals that you have?
Just consulting is great. In consulting, you really got to build a team, because other than that, people are just picking your brain for your knowledge. Yeah. And so it became obvious at that point that contractual work, if I could get contracts to do certain things, pieces of the, if you will, of the of the process of insurance, because insurance by nature is virtually saying that I'm going to write you your insurance. I'm going to give you this piece of paper, and you're going to hope that you get the services that are necessary for you in the event that you have a loss. So if I focus on that loss side of it as well, I'm able to then see where are the pieces that can be in there. So whether it's the glass company that supplies the windows when you get a crack in your windshield, if it's the board up company that comes and boards your home up in the event of a fire or something, protecting whatever the assets happen to be. So when you look at risk management, to me, it is a feel in which you're looking at the broader pieces, not just the how much insurance do I write and how much insurance do I place with you, but also how am I going to service you when it comes time that you might have a loss. And that's where I think we shine more than others, is that you really look at, you have a loss, we wrote that policy, you have a loss, what can we do in helping you to service it? So
if you look at your verticals, how did you have, obviously you have some success stories. Are there surprises that when you look back over your 20 years with this since 1996, what has been the biggest surprise for you thus far?
The biggest surprise is really the challenge, to be honest with you. Okay. The biggest surprise, when you think about it, and you look out and you drive down the street, every part that you pass, everything that you pass has some element of insurance involved. If it's a light pole, someone manufactured the light pole and they had insurance, and they had different lines of insurance. And so you look at it initially, and when I would sort of ride around, I would look and say, well, all of this money that's flowing through here for insurance, when you ride through the streets of Chicago, how do I get my piece of that?
I hear you, man.
And it being a large city,
yep,
you would think that becomes easy. But there are definite barriers to breaking down and making certain that you can get your part of it. And that takes time. That takes some time, and you're undercapitalized when you start and everything else. So it's a challenge.
So everything that I said in the beginning is accurate about limits. Yeah. So, so would you say that the journey and the obstacles that you faced that I've laid out, which, give me a little bit more meat, because I did an internet search to come up with those. You've lived it for 20 years. How do you expand your business? Now that you've started, you got to rely on your network. What has been your vehicle for growth?
The key is that recognizing that you have two clients. You have the client who is buying the insurance.
Did you say two clients?
You have two clients that you have to satisfy in each transaction. You have an insurance company that they give you permission to write their insurance on their paper.
Gotcha.
So you need a contract, or you need some means of writing insurance for them. And then you have the client that you've gone out and you've sought to match up with that particular insurance company. And that becomes an art, if you will. I think that looking at it and figuring out exactly how can I supply my customers, my network, as you put it, how do I supply my network with the coverages that they need at the price that they're seeking? And then how do I keep that insurance company satisfied that I'm bringing in enough business that they want to continue my contract? Gotcha. So as an independent agent, and even if you were a captive agent, they're always going to measure how much are you bringing in. If you're not bringing in enough insurance, well, they'll pull your contract, so you can't write for that company.
And I would assume, just for clarification, when you say independent, meaning you can write for several different carriers, versus captive, meaning just that carrier.
Just that one carrier. Okay. So a State Farm would be a captive, if you will, and then you may have a Chubb who is not captive, or Cigna or someone like that. That's they write through the independent insurance agency.
Well, I'm having fun with this conversation, because you know what I didn't know. I mean, I knew insurance existed, but I actually thought that life insurance was pretty big, but it's one of the smaller ones compared to it. Property and casualty and health happen to be some of the bigger components. So, if you were talking to an entrepreneur, does it make a difference which segment you play in, or do you have to play in all of them?
You want to be able to have a network that you can play in all of them, because as I want to represent, let's say, the Terry Group or Keith Terry, I want to be able to address all of Keith's insurance needs. And so I may need to refer you over to someone who's writing life insurance that I don't do. Health insurance, we don't provide, but I need to have someone that I can be confident that I can refer you over to. And so to take care of those. If I were, I'm a little biased again because I'm on the property casualty side. The difference with life insurance is life insurance usually pays you a very high commission at the onset when you bring on that customer. Gotcha. It drops dramatically in the next year. Property casualty, it simply means you renew the next year, and you can continue to do that. And as long as you've negotiated your commission structure and your compensation structure, if you will, properly, well, then you don't have the fluctuation that I would see in a life insurance brokers that do have. So that's but I mean, they do other things as well. Health insurance is usually a constant. Excuse me. You will find that they'll do some financial planning and things of that nature, which are more products, and more as you grow, they grow with you. So it's a choice, I guess, if you really kind of go with it. I tried life insurance for about maybe about 2 months, and I found that maybe it was the guy that I was working for at the time who had me going over and stopping at every time that I could see a hearse that was there. I would look in the parking lot and try and put cards and flyers on people's windshield. And so, they're thinking about it when they come out of, do I have enough life insurance? So I wrote some, but it just seemed like a grind that it wouldn't work.
Because after that statement, it makes me think, because, when I look at some of the earlier successful entrepreneurs that who have been African-American, is it a fair assumption that the only segment that they could play in is in the life insurance portion of it?
The life insurance is generally, it means that there's a one-on-one type of relationship. So Gotcha. If I have a relationship with you, I get an opportunity to write your insurance. And so that can be a personal relationship, can be through your general network. When you go into property casualty now, and especially when you're starting to go into commercial lines, and you find there are several individuals who have made very good livings off of doing it on the personal lines, home, auto, and things of that nature. But they usually are going to couple that with life as well.
Gotcha. Well, let's get into it before we run out of time here on how you built your verticals, your revenue streams. When I visit your website, I love that you got insurance. You have BOSS, which I can let you talk about the acronym. I know Swiftivity very well because we've had a little interaction on that one. Talent Pipeline and iCheck, and I just thought, wow, this is great. You have products that really make a difference to the foundation of the insurance industry. What was your approach? Because some of these are not easy to bring to market.
Very true. It's still looking at what are the needs, because there's still a need. So if you look at an iCheck, for instance, iCheck was a need in which the states were looking at doing, how do I instantly check whether or not a person is truly insured? So I write insurance today, they give you an insurance card, you get pulled over, you don't know whether the person's truly insured or not.
Okay.
Because they could have canceled it, but no one's going to ask for that card back. So it became an electronic way to do that. The talent pipeline was really a dream of bringing more people of color, if you will, into the insurance industry. And so we had we're blessed with a lady who walked us through how to become a Department of Labor certified apprenticeship program.
Okay.
And so
I
that's
love that.
the talent pipeline. That's there. You have BOSS, which is really kind of the foundation of what we've done most of the time, and that's back office support services. And so we are the back office, if you will, for organizations like our biggest client right now is the Chicago Transit Authority, and we're doing that as for their third-party administrator. We take all of the calls and deal with all of the absences as it relates to those. So it is, and then you have a Swiftivity, which I had a partner, unfortunately, who had a untimely death, but we talked about how to do different things in the medical community. How could insurance better interact with the physicians? And so that's what Swiftivity is. It's really a communication tool that allows for the insurance carriers and the physicians to communicate better. And that's working out pretty well. Finally, it has started to take off. So I'm very happy with where the direction that it's headed. And then, the other things, I'm trying to think of what else is there, to be honest with you. But we write brokerage, and we still write insurance, and there are challenges and creativity pieces that you can do with insurance when you're on the commercial side that you can't do when you're on the personal side, and I like those challenges. So, whether it's a municipality in which you get to manuscript a policy and write what it is that they're going to do, or if it's a particular building that is going to be erected, or several pieces of insurance, and how you can be creative in doing things like contractor support, things of that nature. How do you make certain that you can bring more people into a space, be it insurance, through insurance, using insurance to do that?
I mean, because it is an incredibly large in sector. I just, when I looked at it and said 1.3, and that's probably a small number, $1 trillion, I was like, wow, this is actually money that has been transferred into the insurance companies that exist. And I was like, that is a massive number. And so let's just talk a little bit about some of those obstacles that I talked about earlier before we run out of time. I'm sure you've got some, what I like to say, a ton of stories, because you don't survive this long without having some stories. So has there been any controversies that you have been a part of, or things that have surprised you?
Controversy, yeah. We've been involved in a little bit of controversy over the years. I think back to one in particular in which we did a job out in Las Vegas, and we did the service. We were asked to do it because the person knew me well enough to say, I trust you're going to give me a true, honest answer. Unfortunately, the people in Vegas thought that he was giving contracts to his friends in Chicago. And so we ended up in the newspaper. You can flip anything around if you. And
I take it was a newspaper story. Can be okay.
It wasn't a glowing story, as a matter of fact. But what it did is it opened up the door as I started looking at it after I got through the anger, the depression of whatever it was that was going on. And I said, people are really willing to pick up the phone and talk to me right now, where they may not have been in the past. They want to hear, everybody wants to know, get that little inside scoop, if you will. And
that's
so
true.
They would pick up the phone and talk. And from that, I started building some stronger relationships. Because it was, let me tell you my side of the story. And then it became very obvious that we didn't do anything wrong. And ultimately he was acquitted and we didn't do anything wrong. So that was controversy. But there are other pieces. When I say, getting an insurance contract is not always the easiest deal in the world with these carriers. I got appointed recently by a carrier that's a regional out of the Detroit area. So you would think, okay, Detroit, they're headquartered in Detroit. They
exactly
some people of color that are probably representing them. In their 125 years, we were the first one that they appointed.
Wow.
So it is it isn't easy to get those appointments, because what they'll ask is, well, what business can you float over to me? And what business do
Are you serious?
Oh yeah, that's usually the case. What business can you give me right now? How big is your book in this particular area? And then the other question is, you mentioned challenges on where do you write insurance? So they may say, well, we can give you a contract to write insurance, but I'd be remiss if I didn't say that there's still redlining that goes on within the insurance industry.
If there is.
They don't write in a certain area. So even though you have that contract, they have an appetite for a particular type of risk. They don't necessarily have an appetite for that type of risk in that particular area. So you now have to be, again, remember when I said you had to be a salesperson on both sides? Yeah. You also have to sell that underwriter on why they should write this particular piece of business for you.
Once you establish the relationship. So you're always selling.
You're always selling. You are not, are they giving you a fair price? Are they giving your customer a fair price? Is the coverage going to be adequate for what your customer needs happen to be? So you have to, it is a challenge, and let me put it that way, day by day. But at the end of the day, I don't want to make it sound like, why would you ever want to do something like that? Because it has been a business that has taken me to places that I never thought as a kid growing up in the inner city in Omaha, Nebraska, if you believe that there is one of those. And I really didn't think I would be in different places that this industry has taken me. So, and it is rewarding. Once you do get a relationship, if you maintain and do the right things, those continue to renew with you and you continue to build. And that's the, ultimately you have something at the end of the day that you're able to transfer some wealth over to your family, whether you sell it or you just pass it on. Right. There is a legacy that can continue to go on. And that's so it is a rewarding business as well.
Oh, I'm sure you've made, I won't say a lot of money, but enough that you have your own business, you have 3 kids, a wife that hasn't left you, so you got a whole bunch of great stories. And so for because we have a short time here. So for the young entrepreneurs that exist out there, what advice would you give them on how best to get started? Because I would assume AI is going to change some things. Maybe it isn't. I'm not sure. And so what advice would you give to those folks that are listening to you right now?
AI will definitely be changing some things. So the industry is changing. There's a lot of money that is being put into InsurTech and what it is going to look like in the future. So you want to be able to look at possibly those are areas that if I'm a young person, I might want to look at. The other part is that recognize that while AI can do a lot of things, it can reduce it. It does not build relationships. And so it is transactional. It isn't going to do something that says, hey, I've now served Keith Terry for X number of years, and Keith has a level of loyalty to me, and I have a level of loyalty to Keith. And so you're always going to, I don't think that it'll be replaced. The agency will be replaced because, again, AI can tell you a lot of things and can do a lot of things, but it really can't necessarily sit there and say, Keith, what's keeping you up at night, and how do I address the issues that are unique to what you happen to have as a risk? And so I would urge them to look at the industry. If there is a young person out there that is thinking about it, look at the industry, figure out what your personality happens to be. Everyone is not built to be an insurance agent, but I haven't found a field yet, or if you will, a discipline that the insurance industry is not touched. Most recently, there was a young lady who was an art history major, and I thought, well, everyone laughed at her, including her dad, who was in insurance. He laughed and said, I don't know what she's doing with that type of degree. Well, now she's insuring valuable papers and fine arts for a lot of different institutions. So you can find within this industry. Just find your passion and let it go from there. And talk to someone. Talk to your agent, talk to me, talk to whomever it might be. We're always looking for good talent and always looking for people who have that drive and just really that hunger to move it forward. So.
Well, I have I got several questions. And so I guess my other question is, so you're telling me that there is not a single place that insurance isn't needed?
Right.
And is that because we're a litigious society? I mean, because on one hand, some folks who hate insurance, if they exist, probably because they have to pay too much or they've gotten the low end of a judgment. But, when I think about health insurance in this country versus others, it doesn't always make sense. And we don't have to talk about healthcare, but just the whole insurance industry. You're saying there is no place where it doesn't belong or doesn't fit?
I haven't found a place that it doesn't belong or doesn't fit because, health insurance, you're right, whether it's health insurance, but if you don't have it and you go in for that surgery, what might you come out with in the way of medical bills from a hospital and or physician and everyone else that can be devastating to your family. So having health insurance becomes important. If your home were to, let's get away from the litigious side of it,
okay.
People trying to sue you, but if your home were to burn down or your home was damaged, to be able to rebuild that home may not be financially feasible for you and your family to do. So
Gotcha.
Then what do you have? You got a loss. If you have a business and you start looking at that business and you start saying, if I have a business that sustains a major loss where I can't move forward, well, what do I do with all those employees and the homes and the families that might affect? So while we look at insurance and we look at it and say, nobody likes paying, and I can't even tell you that I love paying my insurance bill. But at the end of the day, when you have that loss, it's predicated on if you and I put our money into something that ultimately the probability of you and I both having a loss at the same time is low. It's slim.
Yeah, gotcha. And so it's probably also fair to say that every insurance carrier is going to be profitable. Because when I think about 1.3 trillion going in, I'm not sure the 1.3 trillion plus goes out. Is that a fair assumption?
I think that's probably a fair assumption that they do pretty darn well, most of them anyway. There's been some insolvency over the years. So
has there?
Oh yeah, there is a fund called the Guarantee Fund, and so as a organization, if you're an insurance company writing in the state of Illinois, you pay into that Guarantee Fund, and that is to ensure that if you're one of your peers, another company goes under, that those policyholders are taken care of.
I gotcha. Okay.
But you still make money. Don't get me wrong. They're not paying all of the profits
right,
there, but
right.
there have been some large insurance companies like a Kemper that you may have used to see, but you don't see them anymore. There have been a number of them who have gone insolvent over the years.
Are there any Black or brown insurance carriers that exist out here?
You named pretty much the ones that do, and that was on the life side. And most of those came into existence because you were having difficulties with the African American community at that time, with funeral costs. And so it was, instead of us passing a hat, why don't we go ahead and actually have an insurance company that can also take care of that family, and you don't have to worry about it as a congregation to really bury the person and then also assist their family. What I have not found is a property casualty minority-owned insurance company.
Gotcha.
Definitely not one that happens to be Black-owned or even, to my knowledge, even Hispanic-owned.
Gotcha.
So,
maybe there's an opportunity there. And so, yeah. And so we're almost at the end. I'm going to give you an opportunity to talk kind of extemporaneously to the audience, Bennie, and say whatever you want, and then I'll take it from there. You have been a phenomenal insurance man. And so is there any final comments that you'd like to make to those folks that might be listening?
Mine is that, the industry seems to be a boring industry. And so this is probably a pitch for my talent pipeline side of it. But recognize that even though there are barriers to the insurance industry and there are certainly been some ceilings, this is probably still one of the best industries for security over time. The unemployment rate has, even in the height of where you see high unemployment, is still going to be less than 2 or 3% within the insurance industry. So if you want a job, you can always find a job. There is no question that there's going to be a job for you out there. So, spend some time looking at the industry, but look at it with an eye of not just simply that home auto. Look at it and see, where might I fit? And that can be from, whatever it is that your dreams happen to be. You want to be an attorney, be an attorney. If you want to be a doctor, be a doctor. But I can promise you that even those nurses, doctors, we have a lot of those in the insurance industry doing very, very well, outside of when they decide not to practice anymore. So there's opportunity, and I would like to see more people in a room when I go into a boardroom, if you will, that look like me. And
I echo you on that one. I echo you on that one. I do. So, Bennie, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bennie Jones, President and CEO of Risk Management Solutions of America. Thanks for listening to The Next Big Thing. I'm your host, Keith D. Terry. If you've enjoyed this episode and you'd like to support this podcast, please share it with others. Post about it on social media or leave a rating and a review. To catch all the latest from me, you can follow me on my YouTube channel at Keith D. Terry. If you want to recommend a guest, please email me at info@terryperformancegroup.com. This has been produced by your host and Jade Productions.